Here we go. Jake and Josh are here to analyze the game they love for the team they love. This is another Dolphins podcast. Here's your host, Jake Mendel and Josh Houtz.
Thanks for tuning in to another Dolphins podcast. And today we are releasing our mock schedules for the 2024 season. Nah, I'm just playing. We aren't going to go that deep into the theory crafting, but I am so excited for today's show. I don't want to speak for Josh, but you don't have to look too deep to realize that I'm a total massive nerd. And today we're putting that nerd power to work. Welcome to Who's That Pokémon? Miami Dolphins Rookie Class Edition. Joshua Houtz, when is the last time you loaded up your Game Boy?
Way too long ago. I think I bought one for the DS, and I never played it. So it's been a very, very long time. I think the last one I truly played that I was, the one that I originally started with was Pokemon Blue. So it's been a long time, man. We were going to come on here and do our mock schedule, like you said, maybe give you a 2025 mock draft, but instead we're going to talk Pokemon, right? We're going to give you your Pokemon comps for some of this 2024 draft class. And I guess if you don't like Pokemon, maybe turn away now. No, just kidding. Enjoy this because this is one of the more fun podcasts that we do throughout the season.
If you can deal with 4 months of mock drafts and 4 months of Raz scores and 4 months of Senior Bowl reports, I think you can handle talking the 151. We aren't going to go too deep here. We're going to stick with the original Pokemon. And Joshua Houtz, this is something you just hinted at we've done before. So let's start out going back in time here, because for as much as everybody likes to kind of take their victory laps, we projected a specific running back in the 2023 rookie class to be able to use all forms of psychic abilities. The overflow of their psychic powers can cause headaches to those nearby. Its brain cells multiply infinity by age, amplifying its psychic powers. It can even lift its body with those psychic powers. Josh, who is that Pokemon?
The Pokemon's Alakazam, right? I think that's what the question was. I thought you were going to ask which player we're talking about because it's Devon Achane. That's who we comped last season as the Alakazam. And I think as we were talking through it, we said maybe he was a Kadabra at the time because he wasn't quite the Alakazam. But our theory was the way he kind of teleported and bounced around the field. Yep. And he had that, he looked like he was teleported at times. So I think we nailed that one. I think that was probably better than some of the scouts and, some of these draft analysts when they do the player comps. I think maybe we have an eye for these Pokemon to player evaluations, but all jokes aside, I think Devon Achane lived up to the hype, right? Lived up to more than we ever imagined as a rookie. So hopefully some of these guys we comp as Pokemon turn out to be like the next Devon Achane.
I got to say, for anyone watching on the 560 WQAM YouTube channel, I didn't crop the players. They have the backgrounds here. This is my, we'll say 3rd, 4th grade Photoshop, PowerPoint abilities, but we're going to dive in here. We shuffle up the picks too, so no counting first, second round here. We are going to get started with Tauros. When attacking, it violently charges, and it will not stop running until it hits something. Although powerful, it can only charge in a straight line. They fight each other by locking horns to prove their strength, and the leader prides itself with its battle-scarred horns. If there are no opponents, it will charge into thick trees, knocking them down. Kind of sounds like the Tasmanian Devil, but Joshua, which member of the Miami Dolphin draft class are we talking about here?
Yeah, for those that didn't guess it, we're talking about Mohamed Kamara, edge pass rusher from Colorado State. 6'1", 248 pounds, was the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. So this is a guy that I think you and I joke, Jake, if the Chop Robinson highlights that we were showing when he was drafted looked more like some of this Mo Kamara stuff that we saw, Dolphin fans might have been a bit more excited. I think he had 28 sacks over the last few seasons. So Tauros, I think this is there, and I guess also the Pokemon.
It's not always going to be clean. It's not always going to be pretty, but football never is. And I think that's why we all think Mo Kamara is going to be an excellent prospect for the Miami Dolphins. Well, we got to pump our brakes a little bit, right? The draft was 2 weeks ago. We're hyping up a 5th round pick, but Joshua, another 5th round pick who was just mean, nasty. Their traits weren't always there. Rashad Jones. While he was a safety, I kind of feel the same way. Just someone who can come in and just make their presence known. 56 tackles last year, 17 tackles for loss. Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. The Dolphins actually have 2 former Mountain West Defensive Players of the Year on the roster in Shaq Barrett and Mo Kamara. And we'll talk more about this edge rusher group as the season goes along. But Josh, I think there's a reasonable opportunity for him to maybe, God, let's say the Dolphins are playing the Jets week 2, and they still haven't really figured out their offensive line. Jalen Phillips is hurt. Bradley Chubb is hurt. That's a scenario where I could see Mo Kamara just coming out having an absolute game and just being an absolute guy when the Dolphins need him. I can't really look too far down the road with someone like Mo Kamara, but I think he's one of those guys, despite being a 5th round pick. I think we even joked before that we wanted the punter in the 5th round just because it'd be someone to go out and have an impact for this team. I think Mo Kamara, especially early on, can come out there and be that guy. You see him wearing that C on that chest, another team captain, and having that Shaq Barrett fun fact is just pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome, and we would love if he kind of Shaq Barrett took him under his wing, kind of helped develop him into that player. I mean, you're talking about, Jake, you mentioned Rashad Jones. That was the first player that I thought of when I started to write up my film breakdown. But then I got into the Andrew Van Ginkles and Devon Godchills and some of those other mid-round guys. So this feels like that next mid-round gem. This is a guy who doesn't have quite that explosive first step like a Chop Robinson, but this guy, is not scared to get down and gritty, has an endless motor, and you saw the production there at Colorado State. Like I said, over the last 3 years, I believe it was 28 total sacks. So for a team that needed to retool this pass rushing unit and a team that, has so many uncertainty surrounding their stars and Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, how they're going to return, having a guy like Mo Kamara to come in here and, if anything, just to be depth. I'm excited for it. And again, trying to pump my brakes because when you turn on that tape, this guy looks like a legit playmaker.
Get a Toros in there, cause some ruckus. You don't want it to be pretty, make things ugly, make it sloppy. That's exactly what the Dolphins need, that spark. I mean, think back to last year, Josh. The Dolphins had an edge rushing group that was a little older, let's say. And it's nice to see that fierce fieriness from some of the younger guys who you hope, can really have an impact later in the season. Moving on, Mr. Houtz. With its ninja-like movements, Scyther can create after images of itself. It can slice thick logs with a single stroke. On rare occasions, it flies with its wings. It's so fast. It is proud of its speed. While young, they live together deep in the mountains, training themselves and fighting with their scythes and moving at high speeds. Who's that, Josh?
Which Pokemon or which player? I'm still right there, Scyther, right? Right there, Scyther. I guess we should say it for those that are not watching it on YouTube, but we're talking about Scyther, and that is the perfect comp, I thought, for Chop Robinson. I think you originally had down Jalen Wright, which also could have been absolutely perfect. But when you see Scyther, when you think about that speed, those big arms, and the pass rushing type abilities that I saw in my head, that was the first thing that came to mind.
And I don't know if this is going to sound outrageous for everyone, but I believe that the Miami Dolphins are aware of the situation they're dealing with Chubb and Phillips coming back from injuries. I believe there's some, talk that maybe Chop Robinson needs some work. He needs to develop. This is someone who I think the Dolphins feel pretty confidently in is going to come out week 1 and have an impact. I think, Josh, my bad. What was it? I saw one clip where he was triple teamed on one pass rush, just opening the door for other people. Those aren't scenarios he's going to find himself in the NFL. But I just thought, man, the speed he has, the first step quickness. I don't want to say he's replacing Christian Wilkins because it's a different position, but just that ability to penetrate the offensive line in the first step, that is something I think the Dolphins lost when they got rid of Christian Wilkins. We want there to be another 90% of snap run stuffing defensive tackles, sure. But I think what the Dolphins are really going to benefit from here, especially early in Robinson's career, is that ninja-like movements of someone like Scyther on the outside. When you see Bradley Chubb and you see Jalen Phillips, you don't necessarily think of these, quick-moving, agile guys. These are monsters who are coming to eat offensive linemen and eat quarterbacks. Chop Robinson's throwing in that knuckleball, and it's going to be very exciting to see that the knuckleball doesn't always have to go over the plate, right? He doesn't always have to line up in the edge. There are scenarios he can line up inside. He's going to move around quite a bit, and that's going to be fun to watch as, Phillips gets healthy, Chubb gets healthy, and Shaq Barrett's still just hanging out.
Yeah, I think that's what's so exciting, right? Is that you can see on tape the way they kind of utilize Chop Robinson all over that defensive line, especially back in 2022. And I love to use the player comps when it kind of fits our when it kind of fits our agenda. And Lance Zerline, I cannot get that Micah Parsons comp out of my head. So we're going to pretend that this is that next Micah Parsons. I'm excited to see where he comes in early and does perform, because I think the one thing, at least on draft night, that Dolphin fans were probably the most upset about is when you look at the stat line. Only 15 tackles, right, Jake? What, 7.5 for loss, 4 sacks? I mean, without going in and actually seeing how many pressures he got, how disruptive he really was, you see that and you're like, okay, this guy is the next Dolphins bust, but this guy is so much more than that. He, has the potential to be an absolute game wrecker. So I'm intrigued to see the way the Dolphins utilize him. I'm intrigued to see the way he develops throughout time. And again, I think Scyther was the absolute perfect Pokemon comp for him, because this dude is a playmaker, and I'm excited to see what he brings to the Miami Dolphins defense and what Anthony Weaver can design up in his head, right? Because there's a reason that the Dolphins hired Anthony Weaver, because of like that different mindset. I think even Mike McDaniel said this guy kind of reminds me of the defensive-minded version of me. So let's see what he can do with a playmaker like that, because he definitely has that 4.48 speed and all the tools to be one of the defense's real difference makers.
It's kind of leaning like a Machop. You got Chop Robinson, Machop. Kind of thought Machoke would be perfect, and then the hope was, oh God, I don't want to have to trade him in order for him to become a Machamp, like that type of thing. Breaking news, we're getting real nerdy with this one. But I really like just that cutting edge quickness. And Josh, you've been going through on the Finsider, writing up a bunch of player profiles. You've been throwing in some film. Can you kind of tell me what it's like trying to identify Chop Robinson, maybe on the defensive line, when you're trying to like really digest the play? How long does it really take you to spot where he is and what he's trying to do for that unit?
Well, normally it'd be real easy, because I mean, this dude has an absolute killer, an alien-like first step. That's what I continue to say. But like I mentioned on Twitter, I tweeted out, I think Penn State's breeding these guys. There's Micah Parsons, there's Chop Robinson, and next year is Abdul Carter, who even looks like he might even be more explosive. So if he wasn't out there on the field at the same time, I think Chop Robinson, you'd be able to pull him out, immediately, because of that first step, because of, that explosion. But I got to give props to Abdul Carter, because that dude looks like an absolute, stud. So when you're watching the tape, man, just Chop Robinson, it's not about, again, the sacks and the numbers. It's just what he does as far as pressuring the quarterback, causing hell for those offensive linemen and opening things up for his teammates. As we'll see, when healthy Jalen Phillips is around, Bradley Chubb, this defense is going to be scary as hell, man.
Moving on to Arcanine. It runs agilely as if on wings. It's known for its high speed, as it is capable, or it says reportedly it is capable of running over 62,000 miles in a single day. Josh, is there a player on the Miami Dolphins you could see running maybe 62,000 miles?
Tyreek Hill, right? But I don't think I don't think Tyreek Hill's this. First, we got to say the Pokemon. Did you say RK9?
Yeah. I meant to say 6,200 miles. 62,000 is kind of bananas. Maybe.
I mean, both. I think Tyreek Hill is probably the answer. But who's that Pokemon? Who's that Pokemon, Jake? Do you want to do this one? There he is, Malik Washington. I sniped you. I'm sorry. I was going to set you up to do it. Malik Washington, the 6th round pick, 184th overall from Virginia guy. Looks like an absolute kind of prototypical slot receiver. I mean, he's played in the slot all throughout college, was very productive last season. And before this Odell Beckham Jr. signing, he was that guy that we're all kind of our ears perked up. He's going to have this huge role in this offense. He might have to put that in the back burner, but I think this is that, he's that wide receiver 3 that we're going to learn to love and learn to support. So Jake, what are your thoughts on Malik Washington? And I love the Pokemon comp we went with.
Yeah, just somebody who's super quick. And it seems like, as somebody who's getting more into dynasty football, this is one of those names that everyone's kind of wondering, like, why did we let Mike McDaniel get this guy? It kind of runs with what we thought about Devon Achane last year. Like, why are we letting Mike McDaniel get this guy who's going to average 8 yards per carry in the NFL? I want to temper expectations a little bit. He's a 6th round pick. You have Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. You just signed Odell Beckham Jr. The Dolphins love to target their running backs, but I still think, man, by the end of the season, Malik Washington's just going to be that guy who just gets lost in the shuffle. He's going to be just running through the secondary. And thinking more and more about it, like, the Dolphins love to line up Tyreek Hill in the slot. They like to line up Jalen Waddle in the slot. But I mean, those guys are so fast, and I don't want to discredit Malik at all, but like, when you're throwing a curl, you can throw a 20-yard curl to like Tyreek in the time it takes a 12-yard curl for someone else, right? So I think that Malik can really operate that slot position more consistently than someone like Braxton Berrios has been able to. CK Parrott, 3 yards per carry, has been kind of banging that drum a little bit. How Berrios has been like a great third down guy. I think 16 receptions for 13 first downs on 18 attempts. Great efficiency, but just someone who not only can get the first down, but then punish the defense for it. That's what I'm starting to think Malik Washington could do. I don't want people to get frustrated, especially early in his career. But man, this is someone who you got to kind of think, given Mike McDaniel's history, this is why these are supposed to be Miami's superpowers, drafting these offensive playmakers late when you have a quarterback on a soon to be massive deal. When you have an offensive minded head coach, you're supposed to be able to hit these 6-round picks and turn them into, contributing players, even though it's not always that simple on just any given draft.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, I mean, we're homers. We're going to sit here. I mean, you can look at my Twitter. I mean, Isaiah Fords, the Lynn Bowdens, the list goes on and on at receivers that I got overly hyped about. But you can see the experts and the draft analysts and the people that, don't have those orange and teal shaded hued glasses that we wear say Malik Washington to the Dolphins, an absolute home run pick. I mean, and then we talked about in a previous pod, Jake, can you imagine him getting in the room with Wes Welker and just, learning the things and the different tools that he really hasn't quite learned yet. So this is a guy who, had success, I believe it was Northwestern, then went to Virginia, had over nearly 1,500 yards last year, 9 touchdowns. Again, I think his role would have been much bigger if Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't here this season, but long-term, I'm on the Malik Washington train. And I think, no disrespect to Eric Ezukomo, who I think we all love and hope that that's our next Deebo Samuel. But if I had to pick one of these guys, and I don't even think it's going to come down to it at this point, I think Malik Washington's probably safe on this roster at this point. But I think I'd probably take him over Eric Ezukomo at this point because I like what Malik Washington brings to the table. And again, I'm excited to see what he can do in this offense with Mike McDaniel and with his coaching staff.
If I was to tell you that Malik Washington's 2024 season consisted of 22-ish, we'll say 25 receptions, about 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, would you consider that a solid stat line for a rookie 6-rounder?
Yeah. With this offense, I mean, yeah, sure. I'm okay with that. I mean, we're sitting here. I mean, you and I, Jake, we continue to go back at it. I thought Eric Ezukomo put up some huge numbers, and we're looking at it. It was all preseason. So, yeah, man, if he does that in the regular season, hell yeah, sign me up for that.
I only say it because that was Cedric Wilson's stat line last year. And I think that's interesting. I think that's a solid stat line. And just kind of to add some context here, if the Dolphins get that out of Malik Washington, plus Odell Beckham is making $3 million base salary with the Dolphins this year. Dolphins fans, Cedric Wilson made $7 million in each of the last 2 years. I'm not trying to sound like a hater here, but we were cool with that as our number 3 option at receiver, and the Dolphins still needed more. So when we, I hear people saying, I don't know if Beckham was a good idea. It was a 1-year deal worth $3 million. I just don't know where those gripes continue to come from. I mean, while you can have him kind of step up and be the second option when Hill or Water off the field, give Malik Washington those opportunities underneath, and I promise you he will take advantage of them. Sticking with the fire Pokemon that run super fast, Rapidash is a competitive Pokemon. If it sees anything faster than it, such as a car or another Pokemon, it will run up to 150 miles per hour to try to outrun it. At one point, its hooves are barely touching the ground. Joshua Houtz, who is that Pokemon?
With the 120th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins traded up and selected Tennessee running back Jalen Wright. So we're talking about Jalen Wright here. I mean, I think this is the perfect comp, right, Jake? Rapidash, the way he can just nearly, just float it almost and levitate with that type of speed. I mean, so I thought this was the perfect player comp or Pokemon comp. I think you did too. And I'm intrigued to see what the Dolphins have in mind for Jalen Wright because they moved up for him. I did an article earlier today that other teams were interested in him. So they have a vision for him. He has more of that toughness to him that maybe he can take on an entire workload, unlike a Devon Achane. And with Raheem Mostert getting up there in age, you can kind of see why the Dolphins did it. So perfect Pokemon comp. Jake, what are your thoughts on Jalen Wright, and have you drafted him in any of those fantasy leagues that you're talking about? Because I did do the homer pick and did go with that 2 days ago. I think I had a rookie draft, and I went with Jalen Wright, and I felt pretty damn good about it.
We have ours coming up this weekend, and I did one mock rookie draft, and oh my God, I sound like a degenerate. But He went right before me. Like Jalen Wright, when I don't have a first round pick. I pushed that in. I came in second last year. I have like the second to last pick in the second round, and he went one pick before that. It absolutely blew my mind, and I wanted to rip my hair out because looking at someone like Jalen Wright, 5'10", 210 pounds. He's a little bigger than Devon Achane, who is 5'9", 186. So you're hoping to develop that more, I don't want to say durable, but someone who you can like trust to maybe get 15 carries a game, where then I can kind of still promote my, let's turn Devon Achane into a featured receiving back, that type of player. Dude, this is another guy who was flirting with 10 yards per carry in college, and he just kind of slid into Mike McDaniel's lap. Just to kind of circle back for a second, you did mention it. Other teams were interested in Jalen Wright, and there are some people a little annoyed, like, hey, we're trading a third-round pick next year for someone who's barely going to play. But Josh, I think it was the Dallas Cowboys who were interested in drafting Jalen Wright if he was there. And if the Cowboys did draft Jalen Wright, would he not be the number one dynasty running back? Like just like that, just considering the speed, considering their lack, the depth, and what this guy can bring to the table?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because I don't think the Dallas Cowboys, I actually know the Dallas Cowboys also did not have a fourth round pick. So the fact that,
Ooh.
they were both kind of sniffing around, you wonder if the Dolphins didn't catch wind of that. And they're like, all right, this is a guy we love. We're not even going to risk it. And you mentioned, people being upset about third. I was admittedly one of them, right? A third round pick to the Eagles. Damn those Eagles. How dare they? And then you kind of remember we get 2 third round compensatory picks next season. I believe we also get 7th for Deshaun Elliott, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
The Dolphins saw a player again who they thought that could long-term can probably be more of a workhorse and that running back that they're going to need when Raheem Mostert rides off in the sunset. And he also brings a dynamic that some of these other guys don't have. I mean, the one thing that you've heard everybody talk about, and the one thing I pointed out in my film breakdown, is his ability, or just as a pass protector. I mean, he takes on a linebacker, takes on a blitzing defender without any hesitation. And that's something that maybe an Achane's a little bit hesitant to do, and you really don't want him to do, right, at his size with those injury concerns. Mostert, I mean, he's a guy that can do it, but again, you don't want him taking on that extra stuff. So I'm intrigued to see the way they utilize him. And you mentioned him having nearly 10 yards per carry or 7 over, whatever it was. A lot of those were soft box. Yeah, a lot of those were soft boxes. And I heard a lot of people say, okay, well, he's not going to get those in the NFL. Wait a second. He plays for the Miami Dolphins, right? Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. You added Odell Beckham Jr. I'm going to keep throwing Jonnu Smith's name out there. He's absolutely going to see those soft boxes. So I think Raheem Mostert said the Dolphins have a 3-headed monster. I'm absolutely here for it. I just don't know how you're going to feed a OBJ, a Tyreek, a Jalen Waddle, and then give all these guys their touches. But that's for Mike McDaniel to figure out, not us.
Workhorse just like a Rapidash. I'm waiting to see when Jalen Wright gets clocked at 150 miles per hour. Then we can have our victory lap there. Raheem Mostert. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, wasn't he like 23.5 or something? I believe he tweeted, or Tyreek Hill tweeted. Like, I think he was already clocked at something insane. So dude is just another speed demon that has a little bit more build to him, I guess.
Which, and then I got to say, man, this who'd you get these player comps? Because I mean, I gotta say, man, there's no wetter fart than hearing, yeah, man, he reminds me of Miles Sanders.
See, now I can't take that because I used to love Miles Sanders, so that hurts me. But you shouldn't be shocked that I like Miles Sanders. But no, you're right. But Mock Draftable takes their combine numbers and some of their measurements, and they have Breece Hall at number 2. So he matched up 82.6%. So I'm going with Breece Hall. But this was a player. I think I used the player profiler, which gave us Chris Johnson last year for Devon Achane. So I thought, okay, they'll give us somebody nice for Jalen Wright, and like you said, Miles Sanders. So we'll stick with the Breece Hall one of those. I don't know that any of these comps are truly good, but dude, Rapidash, sign me up. Get that Pokeball out. Let's catch this dude and give him all those rookie touches from the early 2000s. What was it, like insane, like 300 carries or something crazy?
Bananas, dude. Raheem Mostert met with the media recently, and he was asked about Miami adding another running back. They still got Jeff Wilson. There's still down in the distance, if you look closely, you can see the thunder that is Chris Brooks still on the roster as well. So Raheem Mostert was asked, what was your reaction to see another running back taken by the Miami Dolphins? And he said, my reaction at the time, I was just like, yeah, whatever. It is what it is. So it's the same typical thing, the draft drama pretty much all the time, regardless of the position. But no, I'm honestly excited to have Jalen Wright come in. Just excited to have him here and try to coach him up, try to help him out within this offense, and let's see what he can do. I'm all about in-person experiences, and this far, regardless of any team that I've ever been a part of, who they drafted, I've always embraced the opportunity, not only for myself, but for the people around me and in the room too. Super excited to have everybody here. He's going to be He's going to be here sometime this weekend with the rookie minicamp. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. And like I said, I just can't wait to work with him. Josh, something I want to talk about until we're blue in the face is all of these players the Miami Dolphins have drafted. They have the greatest role models in front of them. And that sounds so homery and super corny, but I mean, Raheem's had to fight and fight and fight in order to get this far, in order to lead the league in rushing touchdowns. You read that first line of my time, I was just like, whatever, it is what it is. And I think that more speaks to how much we get jazzed up about talking about the draft. And these guys are going to come in right away and be instant impact guys. Where Raheem, it's like, all right, we're bringing in guys. It's not someone who's going to be right on my tail right away, but I'm ready to make this player the best he can possibly be so that a year or two down the road, he can be that one to come in and fill my shoes.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that with Chop Robinson. We can talk about it with all these guys, like you said. I mean, the receivers, I mean, whether it's the coaches, the players that they're learning from. We'll talk about the offensive line later. But, yeah, I'm ecstatic to see. Damn it, dude. What the hell was I saying? I'm sorry. What were you saying? I had something lined up perfectly.
Tron Armstead, you got him for Patrick Paul. You got the linebackers.
Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry, my bad. Yeah, man, you're absolutely right. And to think, I mean, we're hearing Raheem Mostert say that, but he actually lived that, right? We saw it last year with Devon Achane. And to that point, if you're going to draft a rookie and every year Raheem Mostert's going to get pushed to lead the league in rushing touchdowns, I mean, so be it. So, I mean, we saw him go absolutely insane last season when they drafted Achane. Maybe he'll do it again this year with Wright. But I love that they have these guys that can help not only take some of that pressure off of them as rookies, help them, get involved and get this offense under their wing, because we know how difficult it is to get this offense down pat, right? I mean, that's why they brought in some of these extra guys. That's why we see some of these players that Mike McDaniel brought with from San Francisco to help teach this thing. So ecstatic, man. Ecstatic to see how this whole thing works out.
Do you think with these levels the Dolphins have, like they have so many wide receivers at this point, so many different packages, so many different running backs, Jonnu Smith's your main tight end. Durham Smythe is this culture guy, and I think Jody Fortson could be a good red zone target. This kind of brings me back to maybe my biggest fear about the Miami Dolphins, Josh, and we still got to see that despite having all these guys, you got to be able to call a play in 45 seconds, and having more guys in that room makes me a little queasy that Mike McDaniel will be able to do that.
Yeah, and when you were saying that, I thought you were going to say we still have questions on the offensive line too. So, it does sound really nice. We have all these weapons, but if Tua's back there and we're sitting here gushing over him throwing the ball in 1.5 seconds because he doesn't have the time, then who knows what happens. But sorry for being negative there. We're excited about Jalen Wright, Rapidash.
Next on the list, Seadra. It can swim in any direction by flapping its fins and tail. It creates whirlpools to exhaust its prey and eats it whole. Joshua Houtz, who is Seadra?
Yeah, that has to be Taj Washington, right? He just has that. I mean, you watch him, he just has that grit to him. Yeah, that dog in him. I mean, he's a little guy, 5'10", 174 pounds, caught 59 balls for 1,062 yards and 8 touchdowns last year with USC and Caleb Williams. But I mean, I think what I like most is just how willing he is to get in a guy's face and to just, take on a block or to try to open things up and get those extra yards. And he just never stops fighting. So this is a guy who is going to be battling for a roster spot, as we'll talk about throughout the entire all season. But I do love what I see out of Taj Washington. It's not just his helmet and that whole aesthetic with the visor. It's just the way he plays, the dog in him. So, dude, Seadra just looks pissed off just like he plays. So that was absolute perfect Pokemon comp. What are your thoughts on Taj Washington, Jake? And do you think he gets a spot on the roster, if not on the 53, which might be very hard, the practice squad?
Another player who has an opportunity to come in and absolutely eat as a slot receiver. That's kind of where I was thinking with the eat his prey whole. Like I could see a scenario where he's just cooking, slot corners, play after play, and really turning into a guy for the Dolphins. Again, dude, we got to pump the brakes a little bit. He is a 7th round pick, and the Dolphins last year only kept 5 wide receivers on the active roster, especially early in the year. That kind of makes me feel that this could be destined to begin the year as a practice squad guy. But either way, man, I'm really liking this depth. We've had guys like Braylon Sanders for 2 years. You've tried the older guys with Robbie Chosen. I like taking another shot at these guys. A 7th-round pick, I mean, you can, Ryan Hayes last year drafted in the 7th round. He was cut in camp. He was signed by the Arizona Cardinals. Fans rioted because we lost a 7th-round pick. He came back. He finished the year on the practice squad, and now he's signed with the Dolphins on a future contract. I don't think they're going to hold on to Washington that loosely, but I do have a slight fear. We can call it that, I guess, but when the roster cut down days come and rosters are trying to get to 53, this is probably my number one player to watch if he's going to land on the practice squad, if he's going to be taken off waivers right away, just because it's, what's Mike McDaniel working with? What's going on with this guy? What did they see? And we need to try that too.
Yeah, and again, I think that you nailed it. This is a guy that's probably going to start on the practice squad that we definitely got to, temper expectations. But this dude fits right into my club that we're going to eventually come up with a name for because he's just embodies everything that I love in a wide receiver. And I'm hoping he finds a role. But like you said, man, this could be the guy that teams are coming calling for or running up to try to poach as soon as they get the chance. Caleb Williams might love him in Chicago with all those weapons, adding his, former teammates. So it's a guy that I'm already overly hyped about, but I think the Cedra player comp is absolutely perfect. And I think you talked about in a previous pod, but he needs to be drug off the field on special teams, right? Because he just wants to, and let's be honest, that's what sometimes allows these players to stick on a roster, what they can do on special teams. So I'm rooting for Taj Washington. I think him and Malik Washington, hopefully they can both find a way on this roster, but I just don't see it happening.
Little Twitter exchange with Travis Wingfield, and something I thought that was kind of interesting. He made a point that all three of Miami's final picks have a lot of experience playing special teams. That hasn't always been the case, but you can tell they realize that this is, a unit that can completely turn a game on its head. I mean, we saw what happened when Buffalo came to Miami late in the season, right? The kick return touchdown that just kind of took the air out of the entire building. It'd be nice to have that back on our side. I mean, the Jakeem Grant experience was fun, but for every electric return he had, you'd see a fumble, you'd see a drop, something like that. So I hope that this, refocus on special teams can only push them all to be better and be better players and overall not be the second worst unit in the entire NFL. That would be a nice bonus as you're trying to win a playoff game. Pidgeotto. A territorial species. It will peck and claw at its opponents. It uses its claws to carry prey for over 60 miles. It flies in circles, keeping a lookout for prey. Joshua, gonna get real nerdy with you for just a second here before we introduce the player. Did you play Pokemon Yellow at all?
Yeah, because that was the one that Pikachu followed Ash around, right? Wasn't that like the next level type stuff?
Did you ever find the level 9 Pidgeotto in the forest, like before the first gym with like all the Caterpie and everything? It was unique to Pokemon Yellow, but you could get a level 9 when they usually evolve at level 16. Super nerdy. I'm sorry, but I always thought that was so cool.
I love it.
It was such a unique little just like twist. It was something different, and then it wasn't as nearly as good because it was weaker. But I always thought that was a interesting twist. But Joshua Houtz, who is that player?
Honestly, I'm not even sure we could pick him out. I mean, I don't even know if I could pick him out of the lineup yet. Patrick McMorris, defensive back, right? A defensive back, 88 tackles last year, 5.5 tackles for loss, an interception, 2 forced fumbles, 6 pass breakups. I put that the dude is harder to find info on than a Mew in Pokemon Blue. I don't know if that's true. That was a lot of
underneath the van.
But yeah. So I mean, I don't know, Jake. What are your thoughts on? I thought Pidgey. I thought that was the perfect Pokemon comp because again, I really don't know a lot about him, but I do love how the Dolphins went out there and draft him. Again, this is a guy that maybe could have fallen out of the draft. You could have picked up as an acorn, and they said no, we want him to come in at Camp and Battle. So I don't know what they have up their sleeves, but I'm still not sure what we got in Pidgeotto, aka Patrick McMorris. What are your thoughts?
Do you hear that vacuum going on in the background? Okay, cool. Sorry about that. So the one thing that really sticks out to me here, 6 pass breakups and 2 forced fumbles. That hawk, that bird soaring through the air, circling from 60 miles away. That's what the Dolphins need, right? That's what this Dolphins really needs is a safety blanket in the secondary. I don't know if you can trust that for a 6th-round rookie, but I love what the Dolphins are doing, whether it's McMorris or whether it's Storm Duck. Safety seems like one of the most obvious positions on this roster where the Dolphins coaching staff can look at all these guys in the eye, the training camp invites, your 6th-round pick, and say, there's an obvious pathway for you making this team. And to me, that's pretty exciting as you have these couple options who you might not know too much about, but the Dolphins have done a pretty good job in recent years with the secondary, with finding these gems, the diamonds in the rough that they can really develop into being contributors. It's not really something we can confidently say. I mean, we had years of Josh Boyer's defense where you don't want to be a young safety or a young cornerback because you're going to be on an island the entire time, and it's going to get very scary. Vic Fangio was a little more safe, a little more conservative, but I'm interested to see what the safeties look like. We know that this Weaver defense is going to feature 3 safeties, but who's that third safety really going to be?
Yeah, and I mean, it all goes back to these guys knowing something and having intel and, doing the legit work, right? Just because we don't know just because I don't know who Patrick Morris is, doesn't mean that, they don't have a plan in place. And again, we talked about the group and the players that they already have in these rooms that they can learn from. I mean, you have some of the best defensive backs in all of football. You got Javon Holland. I mean, so if any of these guys, any of these acorns are going to even have the ability to take that next step, this group, these coaches, they should be able to, see that within the first few months or whatever. And hopefully we'll see what comes of it. But I did not know much about Patrick Morris. Love that you used the bird reference and love that he can be that ball hawk defensive back that perhaps the Dolphins can build and groom similar to what we saw out of Cater Kohu, right? We can now have Darth Cater. Maybe Patrick Morris is that next acorn corner defensive back safety that becomes a stud. Who knows?
Do you think, I mean, Josh, we do these pods every week, multiple times a week. Am I undervaluing what someone like Jordan Poyer will bring to this team? Like, I love the addition. I would never do something else. I mean, he signed a very cheap contract to come to Miami. He's a bit older. We do know that there's this 3 safety defense, and I'm going to keep banging that drum for a third safety, but I don't want that to mean I don't think Poyer is going to have a big role. I think he's going to be a leader. I think he's going to be a great piece of that defense. But man, the NFL season's so long, and I just kind of get queasy putting so many eggs into the older baskets at times. We saw how Miami was just falling apart at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good concern to have, and now I'm a little bit concerned. I mean, we're sitting here May 8th. We got a long ways to go. So, I mean, we're all seeing the different Twitter. I think someone was asking for Justin Simmons. We do still get that money on, what is it, June 1st. So who knows? There's still some safeties out there, but I think you're right, Jake. We see Jordan Poyer. We hear the name. We know what he was in Buffalo. But again, the key word is was. I mean, we're sitting here saying Odell Beckham Jr. isn't quite the same as he once was. We can't sit here and say Jordan Poyer is the same player. So for us to come into this season relying, like you said, on Javon Holland, Jordan Poyer, and then a bunch of uncertainties definitely makes me a little bit queasy. So hopefully the Dolphins have something up their sleeve. And now that we're saying it out loud, we'll get off here and they'll officially sign Justin Simmons or some other defensive back out there.
Dude, I couldn't believe that last week when we were recording with Kat and just, casually talking at them like, hey, Dalton Risner, nah, OBJ, nah, and then he signs right after. It's just, I wish we did it on purpose at this point. I truly do. But we have one more Pokemon here for you guys. And if you're keeping track at home, you know who this is going to be. But we're still going to get jazzed up about it. Protected by an armor-like hide, Rhydon can survive in lava over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit and take direct hits from cannonballs. By rapidly rotating his drill-like horn, it can punch holes through boulders and diamonds, while one sweep of its tail can topple a building. Joshua Houtz, who on the Miami Dolphins can cause this Godzilla-like destruction?
Patrick Paul, baby.
Yeah, right.
Patrick Paul. There's that face. Yeah, I tweeted that out, and no one. I just want someone to answer me. Like, there's certain face masks that you can't use in the NFL, right? I need to know if that's one of them. Like, that aesthetic is just. I am all over Patrick Paul if he's wearing that Bane, whatever it is. But yeah, man, this is Patrick Paul, 6'7", 331 pounds. One of those more polarizing picks, I guess, at the time. Everyone wanted an interior offensive lineman. You can see the vision, but this is a guy who, again, you got to trust in Butch Barry. You got to trust in that rooms around him because he still is raw and still needs to work on some things. But yeah, man, I think you nailed it with that Pokemon comp. What are your thoughts? And is this our left tackle of the future, Jake? I know it's early, way too early to say that.
God, I hope so. And I hate to go back to the support system, man, but you have Butch Barry, you have Tron Armstead. If you haven't watched it, I think it was last week, Austin Jackson interviewed. It's great that the Dolphins do these throughout the offseason. Love a couple guys interview each week just to kind of keep conversations going. And Jackson was speaking about how early in his career, he jumped around to a different, couple positions. I think it was his rookie or sophomore year, he donated bone marrow. And then the year after that, he had COVID. So he was working through so many different things. And the entire time there was this noise as a former first round pick. Is he going to be a bust? Where is he going to sit in the NFL? I mean, there were victory laps when they didn't pick up his 5th-year option just for them to go and sign him to a 3-year deal with how impressive he's been at right tackle. I think the Dolphins I think the support group they have in place for Paul is giving me a lot of confidence of what he can become. I like the ride-on pick because monster, this big, massive guy, but is he too big to be that guy who can run to that second level? We've even seen Teron Armstead do it, which is so damn impressive at his age with all the injuries that he can still get to the second level and eat linebackers. Can Patrick Paul become that guy who gets the second level and eat linebackers? I think that's probably the biggest question, because otherwise, dude, I believe he has that armor-like hide. I wouldn't dip him in 3,000 degree temperature because he'd come out and want to kick my ass. This is someone who I think could be a physical freak. This is what the Dolphins need. And I mean that in the nicest way. This is what they need in December and January when it's cold. They need someone who can make you feel that cold. And I think Patrick Paul, whether it's in 2024, 2025, he can be that dude.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of why the Dolphins went with that, right? I mean, I think they're looking at some of these players and seeing what the ceiling can be and what they can be once they get him in the lab or in the dungeon with Butch Barry. So I'm going to trust in him. You mentioned it. Can he get to that second level? Can he be that athlete that this offense so desperately needs? I mean, that was one thing that really stood out, is he doesn't move as well as some of these other guys on the offensive line. I mean, his hands need work, but I think that's all stuff that can be coached. And I think, again, you got Teron Armstead, you have Butch Barry, you have some of those other guys in the unit. Let him get out there early on. Let him be that 6th offensive lineman, de facto tight end type thing where you can utilize him in that way. And then at some point, I mean, as knock on wood, hopefully we won't have to use him. But as we've seen in the past, we might see more of Patrick Paul this year than, we hope to early on in his rookie year. So I love that you went with that Pokemon comp, Jake. And I just love after we sat here and stewed on it, at the time, maybe there were different players that, all fans, everybody watching the draft, you have the players in mind that you want. More I sit here and watch the film and sit here and truly get a stew on these picks, I'm excited about all of them, and even more excited now that we got our Pokemon comps out of the way.
This is one of the fun shows of the offseason, and the offseason is when you can really just dip your toes into the water and do some different things. So thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you were able to have some fun, got some laughs, and were able to kind of view these rookie draft picks in a slightly different light. And hopefully this has inspired you to go catch them all. The NFL will be releasing its schedule. I think that's May 15th. We'll come back and we'll talk about that. Talk primetime games, different things like that, where the late season collapse will officially start, all that fun stuff that makes Dolphin fans Dolphin. I just saw your face die, man.
Rookie mini camps they're coming up too, right? So we got all sorts of we'll get overly hyped about a clip that we'll see on the internet, I'm sure, an underthrow or something.
As is the tradition of being a Dolphins fan. But thank you all so much for listening to another Dolphins podcast. We will be back with a new show early next week. But everyone out there, go have a great weekend. And more importantly, fins up.
Fins up.